people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
No.
Okay.
¿Cuándo hacemos la pelea? Decile, va a hacer la pelea. Ahora ganale a Yoka y después tenemos que pelear. Soy la mejor del mundo en tu categoría para llegar. Tienes que pelear conmigo, ¿no? Sí, bueno, vamos a hacerlo, sí. Y sí, ella es la mejor en su categoría. Yo la mejor en la mía hace 13 años. Tiene que querer. Bueno, okay. Acá, delante de todos, aceptó la pelea. Acá está la mano. Vamos, arriba del ring, vamos a hacer.
I think it's a little naive of Jessica Bopp, former WBA light flyweight champion Jessica Bopp, once the #1 light flyweight in the world.
She was good.
I think it's a little bit naive of her to think that a hug and a handshake will be enough to secure her a fight with Estrada after the Valle fight.
I think Senicia is going to win that fight. I think she's going to become the minimum weight division's undisputed champion.
Been all through that and why, whereas Jessica Bopp, the former champion, she campaigns north of minimum weight at light flyweight, where she used to hold the WBA title.
Jessica Plata is the one who took it from her. Jessica Plata, who's one of 2 unified champions at that weight.
Jessica Bopp is still campaigning at that weight, but she seems to be vying for a fight with Estrada.
And like I said, I don't think a hug and a handshake is going to be enough to secure it.
Estrada's made it clear that she means to become an undisputed champion at not just 1 weight, but 2. So any fighter that's looking to share the ring with her likely needs to get themselves a belt, get in line to fight for a belt, because outside of that, I don't think Senicia is going to take very many detours. It's been well over a year since Jessica Bopp lost her WBA title to Mexico's own Jessica Plata. Jessica Bopp hasn't been on the sidelines since then. She has fought, she has rebounded. She had 2 fights last year, one in October and another in December.
At light flyweight.
There was a time when, for me, this was the most anticipated fight anywhere at or around these weights. Estrada, Jessica Bopp.
There was a time.
But I do feel like that time has passed because Jessica is not here today the exact same fighter that she was yesterday. Yesterday, she was in fact the #1 light flyweight champion in the world, the #1 light flyweight in the world. Today, she does appear to have lost a step.
She's slowing down.
She's 39 years old, several years older than Estrada, who's 31.
Fight between them could still be a good fight. I still think Jessica's a formidable fighter.
Formidable enough to handle herself against a certain level, a certain caliber of opponent. But I don't think she's everything now that she used to be. I don't. Jessica Bopp, who is best described as a very nimble, very fleet of foot, boxer, puncher, very strong. One of the stronger punchers at or around these weights. One of the only fighters that rivals Estrada in athleticism, agility, mobility, strength.
She's got power.
Though it's safe to say that Jessica Bopp's style is a younger woman's style.
Because of all the movement it requires, the reaction time, the reflexes.
Jessica Bopp's style is a younger woman's style.
That is.
She can have an impromptu meeting with Estrada, who I'm not even sure understood her.
Put her on a spot.
Ask her if she wants to fight, give her a hug and a handshake, and then hope for the best. But the reality of it is that if Jessica wants to get Senicia in the ring, she needs to get a hand on some titles.
Yeah.
All the alphabet titles at light flyweight are split between 2 fighters, 2 champions, one from Argentina and the other from Mexico. Jessica Plata of Mexico, who beat Jessica Bopp.
And Evelyn Bermudez of Argentina, Jessica's countrywoman, a unified champion.
Some history there. Jessica Bopp beat Evelyn's older sister, Daniela Bermudez, multi-weight champion. This was years ago. You have to wonder if Jessica has enough left in the tank to beat Daniela's younger sister, Evelyn, who's a unified light flyweight champion. Can she do it?
Make a long story short,
If what she wants is a Senicia Estrada fight, she's gonna need to get her hands on some belts.
Senicia's after belts. She wants the belts. The belts at minimum weight, the belts at light flyweight. And if Jessica wants to get her in the ring, she's gonna need to get her hands on some belts. Otherwise, I don't see it happening.
What Senicia wants. She wants the belts. She wants to become an undisputed champion at multiple weights, and short of having a belt or being the mandatory for one, I just don't see Senicia taking very many detours.
Why would she? What's in it for her?
It's not me advocating against the fight. I could still go for it. You know, I still think Jessica Bopp, I still think she could make it competitive. Even if she isn't today everything that she used to be, it could still be a fun fight to watch. But for it to happen, there's got to be something in it for her. There's got to be something in it for Senicia. And right now,
I don't see what Jessica Bopp has to offer her.
elsewhere in the world of boxing, a bit of back and forth between Gervonta Davis and Conor Benn, who were supposed to be fighting.
Yeah, right.
Per reports, they were supposed to be in negotiations. Gervonta Davis said, "I'll beat the shit out of you, dog. We all know this. I was just trying to be good for the sport and beat your ass in your hometown. But the spoon-fed white boy kept trying to cheat me out of my fucking money."
Conor Benn responded.
He responded by saying, "You beat the dog shit out of who? Calm down, you angry, stumpy little man. If you feel lowballed, tell your daddy Al to make a counter-offer and I'll fight you in America. And knock your head clean off, and then you'll be 2'2".
It's gonna go right over people's heads.
What is?
Gervonta Davis wants to fight this guy. Why don't you just make him a counter-offer? If you don't like the money that Eddie Hearn offered for the fight,
right?
Counter it.
You're supposed to be the A-side. You're supposed to be Mr. Big in the Britches, the face of boxing to some people. If you don't like the money that Eddie offered, why don't you make a counter-offer?
He never makes counter-offers.
All those years ago when Eddie Hearn offered him 6 or 7 or 8 million or however much it was to come over to their side and fight Tevin Farmer, unify titles with Tevin Farmer, back when him and Tevin were champions at the same weight. All those years ago, Eddie offered up all that money, but the Gervonta Davis people, they never offered up a counter-offer.
Why not?
Because they didn't want to fight. If you don't want to have to cross over to DAZN, you don't want to have to fight under anybody else's banner, you want to do things on your own side of things, then you offer a counter-offer so you can make it happen, so that the fight can still happen, but on your side instead of theirs.
And they didn't make a counter-offer. They didn't make a counter-offer for Tevin Farmer the same way they didn't make a counter-offer for Conor Benn.
Because they don't want to fight. They're just talking. What's interesting is that Gervonta's the one that got the ball rolling. He's the one who expressed an interest in fighting Conor Benn after Conor's fight with Pete Dobson.
He doesn't like Eddie Hearn's offer, but he didn't counter it. And he's supposed to be this big name, this big A-side fighter.
No counter-offer for Tevin Farmer years ago. No counter-offer for Conor Benn years later. No counter-offer for a Devin Haney fight. No offer at all, really.
Never made Devin Haney an offer to fight. Turki Al-Sheikh offered to pay for the fight, expressed an interest in doing Devin Haney versus Gervonta Davis in Saudi.
Gervonta responded by demanding 2 Ferraris just to have that conversation. If he's interested in doing a fight with Devin, one would think that he would make an offer or a counter-offer to do it here in America.
He doesn't make offers to these guys, and when these guys make offers to him,
he rejects them, he turns them down, but doesn't counter them with offers of his own, which is why I keep telling you, this guy don't want to fight nobody.
Well, he's fighting Frank Martin.
Big fucking deal he's fighting Frank Martin. Who the fuck asked him to fight Frank Martin?
Oh, come on, Frank Martin was good enough for Shakur Stevenson last year. How's that all of a sudden a bad fight this year?
Well, Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin is going to be billed as a pay-per-view, whereas Shakur Stevenson versus Frank Martin wasn't going to be billed as a pay-per-view. You were supposed to see that as part of your existing ESPN Plus subscription. That's how.
Short answer. One fight costs $75 or $80, and one doesn't.
Gervonta Davis, for the most part, he fights these guys that nobody's asking him to fight, and he charges between $75 and $80 every time he does it. So if you're seeing that people are poo-pooing over his fight with Frank Martin, where they weren't poo-pooing over Shakur's fight with that same Frank Martin, that would be the why. That would be the reason. Because when Gervonta fights him, it costs more money, and why should it?
It's not the same circumstances.
Can't pretend that it is. Shakur Stevenson versus Frank Martin. Shakur Stevenson, who's new to 135 pounds, he was moving up in weight.
He only had one fight at the weight.
It was part of the intrigue that Shakur Stevenson was making his bones at 135, whereas Gervonta has already been there for several years now.
Since 2019, I think it was.
Whereas Shakur, he moved up there last year, so that was part of the intrigue, that Shakur was new to the weight. Gervonta, He's several years older than Shakur Stevenson, than Devin Haney, than Teofimo Lopez, than a lot of the young guys that are around these weights. And for him, it's different because people have been waiting on him to fight those kinds of fighters, not a Frank Martin.
He never gave them the Tevin Farmer fight. He never gave them the Vasyl Lomachenko fight. He's not about to give them the Devin Haney fight or the Shakur Stevenson fight.
The Lopez fight, a no fight that they ask him for. Instead, he's going to charge between $75 to $80 to watch him fight Frank Martin.
Who the fuck asked him to fight Frank Martin?
Well, who the fuck asked Shakur Stevenson to fight Frank Martin?
WBC asked Shakur Stevenson to fight Frank Martin.
Oh.
And when they did, it wasn't going to cost me or you between $75 and $80. That's the difference. And that's why people are poo-pooing on this fight where they weren't poo-pooing on that fight.
It's not all doom and gloom, though. Some people are talking up the fight. Some people are pretending they're excited.
Are they?
So one guy that goes by the name Ray Forklift Jackson say, let me put you boxing fans on game. If I made over $50 million in my last fight, why the fuck would I go overseas for a $10 million guarantee? I could make that here.
No, you can't.
Fighting anybody. You gotta offer me something that's gonna get my attention. That $10 million isn't it.
Oh, so is he under the impression that the commercial value of a Ryan Garcia fight is the same as a Frank Martin fight?
Because Frank Martin is as popular as Ryan Garcia, is that it? Or because it's a guarantee that Gervonta Davis will sell over 1 million pay-per-view buys with anybody moving forward? Is that how he thinks this works?
Because it's not.
The commercial value of a show is specific to a show and how many people are willing to pay to see it. That's why Floyd Mayweather was able to sell in excess of 4 million pay-per-view buys with Manny Pacquiao, but afterwards, he couldn't crack 1 million with Andre Berto.
Believe you me, Gervonta Davis is not about to make with Frank Martin what he made last year with Ryan Garcia. He isn't.
This is what happens when forklift operators try to pass themselves off as boxing experts, boxing managers, and promoters.
Morons.
So in this guy's mind, it's all right for Gervonta Davis to walk away from practically any and every offer that's made to him because he thinks he's going to sell over 1 million pay-per-view buys moving forward every single time he gets out there based on what he did last year.
This is how your average Gervonta Davis fan's mind works.
Average, more like below average. But hey, if he's happy to pay $75 or $80 for Davis versus Martin, more power to him. If he's actually going to pay that and not steal it with a fire stick.
Whatever.
I never thought Gervonta was going to fight Conor Benn anyway, or Devin Haney, or Shakur, or anybody with a pulse.
He's doing exactly what I said he would do.
Men's super middleweight news on the heels of his big knockout win yesterday. Eddie Hearn says Berlanga would fight fire with fire in the ultimate challenge against Canelo. Most don't like the idea of Edgar Berlanga being afforded that opportunity ahead of David Morrell, ahead of David Benavidez. Even I don't like it.
But that's the tune Eddie Hearn is singing.
I thought it was a great performance, exactly what he needed, Hearn told Boxing Social. Potty is a tall, strong 168-pounder who lets his hands fly. The first 2 rounds were slow, and then Edgar got into it. Podreg took some big shots in the 3rd and 4th, and then it was a brutal stoppage. Great knockout, big statement. Berlanga is now the WBA #1 mandatory challenger for the world title. So great night for Edgar Berlanga.
The WBA is culpable.
People are going to take advantage whenever you let them take advantage, whenever and wherever they can. So if it's possible for them to do so, it's because of the WBA. One would think that their mandatory challenger would be David Morrell, not Edgar Berlanga.
David Morrell was already WBA regular champion before Edgar's fight yesterday.
If it's even possible for Edgar to skip him in the queue, then why should David Morrell continue to pay sanctioning fees to a sanctioning body that would allow this?
Why?
Anything but an impressive stoppage was not good enough tonight, admitted Hearn. Respect to Potty, but if we're talking about fighting Jaime Munguia next, we're talking about Canelo, you've got to be destroying people like Podreg McCrory, and he did that, and he did it in style, and I think he gained a few believers tonight. Hearn believes Berlanga's #1 spot with the WBA now makes a Canelo fight inevitable at some point, even if it is not in the 26-year-old's immediate future, and let's hope that it isn't.
I hope it isn't.
Still a long way to go, Hearn said of Berlanga's future, but now we've got that #1 position with the WBA, he's going to get his shot, and whether that's in May or September or in May of 2025, it's going to come. Canelo Alvarez is a special talent. When you're talking about mixing it up at super middleweight, Jaime Munguia, absolutely. David Benavidez, great fighter. Yes, I believe he can. Caleb Plant, Jermall Charlo, Absolutely. Canelo, it's the ultimate challenge, and everyone wants the ultimate challenge. It's Puerto Rico against Mexico. It's the mandatory challenger, and I promise you this. When Edgar gets his shot against Canelo, he will fight fire with fire. He won't try to survive. He won't take a payday. He won't run around the ring. He will come to fight Canelo Alvarez. If he gets knocked out, respect. But he will bring the fans a firefight, and I think that's what Canelo wants now at this stage in his career. He doesn't want to fight a guy that's moving around, trying to survive. Whether it's next or September, he will get a shot.
If he does ahead of David Benavidez, if he does ahead of David Morrell, that's just brazen chicanery. There's no other word for it.
And the fight that I would prefer to see Edgar Berlanga in is perhaps a Gabriel Rosado fight, a battle of the Puerto Ricans, the Philly Rican versus the New Yorican.
Maybe Jesse Hart afterwards.
Because he's not ready for Canelo, and someone of Canelo Alvarez's stature shouldn't be wasting his time or the paying public's time with a mismatch with a guy like Edgar Berlanga. That's just as bad as a Charlo fight, as far as I'm concerned.
What lends credence to the notion that it might happen, and it might happen sooner rather than later, is that Edgar Berlanga is ranked at #1 by way of the WBA after yesterday's fight.
And that the WBA, like the WBC, their sister organization, they make up their rules as they go along to accommodate what's best for them, what's best for themselves, as opposed to the fighters that are paying them sanctioning fees, as opposed to a fighter like a David Morrell.
What lends credence to the notion this might actually happen sooner rather than later
is that things don't seem to be working out between Canelo Alvarez and the people over there at the PBC. Rumor has it
he may be leaving.
Per Boxing Insider Rick Glacia, that very big Canelo announcement will be shortly, and I will be further vindicated in entirety. As most know, legalities don't happen quickly, especially in boxing. Appreciate your patience. Enjoy your Sunday.
Rick Glacia was one of the first who speculated that things ain't all sunshine and rainbows between Canelo and the PBC because they refused to give him his guarantee for a Charlo fight. They're insisting that he fight Jaime Munguia instead.
Which is a pretty bizarre request when you think about it, as Jaime is not one of their fighters. Surely he couldn't have been part of the deal that Canelo Alvarez reached with them last year. So how do you make his guarantee contingent upon fighting him? It's on that predication that these rumors suggest. Canelo Alvarez may soon part ways with the PBC because they're making his guarantee contingent upon fighting Jaime and not Jermall Charlo. And if he were to leave, where would he go?
Matchroom.
Who would he fight?
Edgar.
Who, according to Eddie Hearn, as a result of yesterday's fight, is now ranked #1 with the WBA. So you see where the rumor becomes palpable, where it's possible, where it's plausible, that in May, Canelo could fight this guy, even though to me, that's a mismatch. And that would make him subject to criticism, but when is he not subject to criticism?
Yeah, they can't shut the fuck up about this guy.
Hearn hopes to build this as a classic Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry, but you'll excuse me for saying so, that this ain't Felix Trinidad versus Oscar De La Hoya.
Felix was in a very different place when he fought Oscar than Edgar is if he were to fight Canelo.
Nevertheless, the rumor is that Canelo may be leaving the PBC soon, going back to Matchroom, and if he does, that is one guy they can offer him. That is one guy that he can fight, whether we like it or not.